It's Dothan High School Wolves football on your home for great country legends. 96.9 The Legend. And now it's the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show. I am Phillip Jordan, the in-studio host and producer of Dothan Wolves football, right here on 96.9 The Legend. Each week, Coach Kennedy reviews the Wolves' previous game and previews the upcoming opponent. Tonight, Coach Kennedy reviewed Dothan's 21-14 loss against Opelika last week and previewed tomorrow night's game against the JAG High School Jaguars as they return to Ripuse Stadium. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, Coach Kennedy will join Ken Lambert and myself right here on 96.9 The Legend. All right, everybody, welcome into another edition of the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show here on 96.9 The Legend, along with Ken Lambert. I am Phillip Jordan, filling in for Jerry Coleman. And, of course, as always, we're joined by Dothan Wolves head coach Jed Kennedy. And Coach Kennedy coming off a tough loss last week against Opelika. Just open up with your thoughts and takeaways from last week's game.
Yeah, obviously felt it was one that got away from us. It was a very unique game. Obviously, we lost by 7. We were up 14-0. We only had 6 possessions. Obviously we run the football, but, they slowed the game down and ran the ball. And we had the ball 3 times in the first half, and our third possession came with 1:35 left. And so just when those types of gains happen, there's just not a lot of room for error. And, got the ball down, had 1st and 5 inside the 5-yard line, and just had a couple things not go our way and didn't score. And they beat us with a long touchdown pass with under 2 minutes left at the end. So certainly one that ripped our hearts out. You could tell that, by the looks on the coach's face and, more importantly, our players' faces after the game. But, you come back and you get ready for another week of work, and that's what we've done.
Coach, I agree all the way home. I'm thinking, you can think of those handful of plays like we had talked about, and there's some things that stood out, and just a lot of players' names. One, I'll just start with Sam Broadway, who just the toughness of him to go and play. I know he didn't seem like he was maybe 100%, but I think he played a great game and toughed it out. Pretty good in the passing game, even ran the ball some, but I know he was hurting a little bit, but I think he did everything he could to help his team Friday night.
Yeah, Sam's a great kid, 3-year starter for us, high character kid. I think, obviously threw the ball, I thought, really well. Threw the ball, I think we were 9 for 12 passing, and that's with, an incomplete pass there at the 2 incomplete passes at the on that last little drive, and we had, the ball with a minute left or whatever. So going to that, he was 9 for 10 on the game. Yeah. 9 straight complete passes. The only one that wasn't was that 4th and 6. And, I would say, similar with you, didn't quite have, I think that same explosiveness that we're used to seeing with Sam, in the run game. But, obviously we're a better football team with Sam out there. Kind of the glue that keeps us together. And, certainly going to be one that we miss when he's gone, but going to enjoy the heck out of it when we got him.
Yeah, while you're talking about passing, a couple of really big receptions by Tanner Johnson. Really like the way you used him down the field, and those were 2 of the biggest pass plays that you had Friday night. Yeah,
Tanner's a great athlete. He played blocking back for us as a junior, that fullback position, and we moved him to the tight end position this year, and it's really given us an element that we haven't had the last 3 years. I think when you add everyone knows how good Daniel George is, and we've got 2 good slots in Jordan Rollins and Marcus Reeves. Well, now when you add a 3rd potential receiver in all of our pass games, in our pass game with Tanner Johnson, he had just a, if you think about it, he had a big catch on that 3rd and long against Enterprise. He had 2 big 3rd down catches Friday night, and a big one on 2nd and long. So certainly a great player that, we're continuing to, find ways to get him involved in our offense.
Coach, one player on the defense side of the ball I wanted to ask you about, Kerry Gatlin, had the big play at the end of the first quarter, the interception as they were moving the ball. Then in the third quarter, I know they eventually kicked a field goal, but he broke up a touchdown pass there. Just talk about Kerry Gatlin, just what made your team and his performance on Friday night.
Yeah, he started for us last year as a sophomore. He's only a junior for us. Between him and Case and Booth, they combined for 31 tackles Friday night. And just the way that they played, we knew that a lot of things were going to fall on our safeties in the run fit. And, he had a great pick, on their first possession of the game, and then, just did a great job fitting the run. I mean, statistically, if you look at it, just, it's really disappointing. We lost that game. We held them to 110 yards rushing. If you take out the last pass of the game, they had 60 yards. I mean, they had 160 yards of offense going into the last long throw. And what's crazy is I thought we played well enough defensively to win the game. We played well enough offensively to win the game. They just made a few more of those big plays at the end when they needed to. And that's, like I said, that one hurt. Like I said, it stung. We knew that was a big game when it came down to, our ultimate goal of being a playoff team. It doesn't mean we're out of it by any means, but obviously by winning that, it would have put us in driver's position for that. But, there's one thing about this region. You don't have a lot of time to feel sorry for yourself and sit back, and you just got to get ready for the next one. And that's what we've done.
Coach, talking about that pass in the game, they decided to go for the game for their sophomore quarterback, Whit Cooper. Thought he played a pretty good game. He was not a dual threat type quarterback, but threw the ball well, ran their offense well. And, it seemed like, and I'm trying to think about that last play, but it seemed like throughout the game, the success they had with passing was more of the timing route. They were kind of driving our defensive backs off, and then they would run that little dig route or stop route in perfect timing. So they were kind of throwing underneath. But that last pass of the game, I did notice it was a little stop and go route. So I think they built on that and seemed like just enough to get our defensive back shoulders turned and run by him there.
Yeah, and our kid, the kid made an unbelievable throw. Our kid was right there. They ran a double move. I think that's where we got to have a little bit better situational football. A hitch route doesn't hurt us there, right? They still got to drive the length of the field, and we just stuttered just a little bit, on that double move, and that was all they needed. And like I said, that's what we talk about making. The kid made an unbelievable throw, and it was, we had pressure in his face. The kid got hit as he threw it. He still was able to make a pass, probably, 50 yards in the air. So again, got to tip their hats to them for making plays, and, obviously frustrated that, we didn't do enough at the end to win that football game.
Yeah, hit him in stride so he could keep running. And I think we got a hand on him, but he spun away. But anything shorter, we probably would have tackled him there on the reception. But as you say, we laid it out perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, Coach, the opening touchdown for you guys, Marcus Reeves getting in there, long 87-yard drive. You guys know AJ had a 21-yard run also on that drive. But just Marcus Reeves, him being part of that room, with you guys being a playmaker and scoring that first touchdown.
Yeah, obviously we have a lot of talented backs, and I think everybody knows that what we do goes through AJ Alexander. And obviously, with Marcus, his runs are built off our counter game, right? We run AJ, and Marcus comes back, and Marcus is quick, he's shifty, very one of those things where he makes a move and it's like, gosh, I didn't see that coming. And certainly, I think has found his niche inside of our offense, and he's got great hands, got some catches on the year, and has just done a really good job running that counter play for us.
Coach, it was a pretty physical football game. Obviously, they have the big fullback. They ran Blake Johnson. After they went down 14-0, it looks like they just said, hey, we're going to run the ball. And they kept giving it to him until his tongue was hanging out there. But I thought our D-line really stood up, didn't give up the big play. It really came up strong. I know in the first half at least, I called Javion Thomas's name multiple times. He was always the last guy to get up off the pile. But Zay Ibarra was in there as well. And Kenoris Ford played a good game. The one thing that I always am amazed by Kenoris is how fast that D lineman is. He's got to be one of the fastest. I've seen him chase down running backs from across the field. Unbelievable speed.
Yeah, it reminded – like I told you last week, we had 2 really good weeks of practice, really good weeks. And, we told our kids if they're going to beat us, they're going to have to beat us throwing the football. And our run defense was really, really good. We talked about the Johnson kid, the number 3 kid. He really didn't hurt us. They had one drive on us. They had 2 short fields that led to field goals. They had one drive, the third drive of the game for them, third drive of the game, where they drove the length of the field and scored, where they just kind of chewed it up on us. But other than that, our D played good, and like I said, they played well enough for us to win the game. And, just as a collectively, we just didn't make enough plays when we needed to.
Well, I'll tell you what I was thinking, and I jotted this down, and how long we've been watching it now, 3-4 years. But we talked about Tanner Johnson earlier, and I can be watching intently, and I still cannot see that direct snap that goes to him. Was it a big third down or fourth down conversion?
Third down run, he had one.
And because it's a big scrum so quick, and I'm like, I'm not sure what happened. Did we fumble it? And then I realized, oh no, it was the direct snap to Tanner.
Yeah, it's obviously we're a deception-based offense, right? Ball's going everywhere, and hand it to this guy, hands it to that guy, and pull to the right, run the ball to the left, and that's one of those little plays you get to run about 1 or 2 times a game, and when it works, you look really, really smart, and when it doesn't, say, why the heck did you call it? Like we did against Carver, and I think they got 7 points off of it. So,
Coach, before we go to break and transition to this week's game against JAG, any other players or anything, despite the loss, positive you saw out of your team coming out of Friday night's game?
Well, I think, number one, I think, if you look at, Aiden Jackson, on the offensive line, man, he's had just a great senior year for us. And something that'll be announced, might have been today already, but he's going to have a chance to play in some, I think, high-level all-star games and things like that. And, he's a Troy commit. And, I've just been so impressed with his leadership. And, I think the hardest thing as a coach is, there was more players in tears than not after that game. It hurt, kind of got ripped away from us. And, again, that's nothing against Opelika. Obviously a good football program. I think, unfortunate we got the short end of the stick this year when it came to travel. I mean, we haven't been home since August 30th. We've been on the road 4 weeks in a row with a bye week. And there's nobody else in our region that's had over two road games in a row. We've had 4. So our kids have found a way to battle through that and play. And, again, we're not out of the playoff hunt. We'll talk about JAG here in the next segment, but, got to get back on track. JAG's a good team to do that against. And, just continuing to press forward. And, what I challenged our team was, especially defensively, was we had 2 not very good weeks in a row against Central and Carver. And they came out and played, and proud of those coaches, and really just proud of the kids of the really 2 weeks of preparation they had and things that they did to get themselves in position to play a good football game Friday night. And they did that.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick timeout. But when we return, we'll preview tomorrow night's matchup against the JAG Jaguars out of Montgomery. You're listening to the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show on 96.9, The Legend.
Welcome back to the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show right here on 96.9, The Legend. We're visiting with Coach Kennedy, and we're talking about the upcoming game tomorrow night against JAG. And if JAG still sounds a little unfamiliar to you, that is the old Jeff Davis in Montgomery. If you flash back, a couple of name changes there in the last few years. Coach, you mentioned it's a good team to kind of get well against, but it's always one of those teams that scares you a little bit. They're 1-5. They've had the win against Percy Julian. But as we learn about those Montgomery schools, they seem to have talent at a lot of those skill positions you have to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously – they've went through coaches up there left and right, and I think it's hard to build a program that way. I know there's a lot of transitioning of kids between the different schools, and I think that makes it tough, and I think they've lost more than what they've gotten. They've struggled this year, but like you said, I mean, in 7A football, there's every team, whether they're good or bad, is going to have 4 or 5 players where you say, wow. And, I'll tell you right now, they've got 3 or 4 kids that play receiver, and they all rotate back at quarterback. They can run, they can run the football. They can throw the football. Certainly present some challenges that way. I think it'd be fair to say we're more talented than they are. We're I think, more disciplined than they are, and, more sound in the schemes we run. And if we go out and play good football and play Dothan football, we shouldn't have any issues. But again, like I said, we've had a tough 4 games in a row. Played. I think I figured out our last 3 losses. The teams are combined 19-3. So it's we certainly haven't lost any bad football teams. So I think it's it's good to get out and play a team that we're expected to win, and know that if we go out and play good football, we can win handedly. And to be honest with you, we probably need that right now.
Coach, obviously this week, school's out, but practice wise, how's the response been from the team?
Yeah, that's one thing about kids are so resilient these days, and I was sitting there, talking with our athletic director the other day, and we were sitting in a situation last year, 2-4. We had won 4 in a row or lost 4 in a row, and it was I was so proud last year, and it's been this year. Lost 3 in a row. 2 of them we lost the game. The third one, kind of felt was snatched away from us, but still lost that game. And we don't have school this week, and I mean, gosh, it's nobody misses practice. Everybody's on time. I was telling our athletic director today, we met this afternoon, and man, just had an awesome practice. And really the only difference is we go in the mornings. I still think that we have to remember that they're kids and take advantage of that. So we bring the kids at 9 in the morning. We're done at about noon. So that way, the kids still have the rest of the afternoon to do what they got to do. And a lot of our kids work, gives them a chance to pick up some extra shifts and those types of things.
Coach, we talked about earlier how long you've been on the road. It's been 5 weeks since you've been at Rip Hughes. And JAG is kind of in the middle of their long away stretch right now. They've struggled offensively, I think on average giving up around 15 or scoring 15, but giving up more in the line of 48. And taken into that, they've played some of the top tiers in the region and throw in, I think, a Hewitt Trustful to lead in that. So do you feel like this is, if your defense can play like they did against Opelika, you feel like this could really be the difference in the game? Yeah,
I mean, we expect to play well defensively. Like I said, you watch, there was plays against Opelika where they're gashing them for series. It's just they've struggled with finishing drives. They get themselves behind the chains with holding penalties and turnovers and those types of things. So we're certainly not looking past them. We've prepared for them like we do prepare against any other team. Like I've told the kids, the plan is to start fast and get on top of them. I would hope that this is, one of those games that, we have a few seniors that don't start for us, that, all of those kids can get reps on a Friday night because they deserve that. They work just as hard as everybody else. But again, those things don't happen if we don't take care of our business early in the football game.
Hey, Coach, I was looking too, and this is according to Max Preps. I know A.J. Alexander last year in this game had 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, and also a catching touchdown. So how big is it going to be, guys? Obviously get him going, but other guys, you just mentioned that, but just attacking with that your run game and then having a lot of success early at that.
Yeah, well, I think number one, it's a game. Hopefully, we can work on throwing the football. We have thrown the ball more than what we have, right? We're throwing it at double digits. I know we're not throwing it 20 times a game, but we're throwing it 10 to 14 times a game, and certainly when people know that there's a chance for the deep pass, it softens people out of the box, and it's the reality is this. AJ Alexander is one of the best backs in the state. He's second right now, I think, in the state in 7A rushing. He's got 850 yards through 6 games. And, we don't go into it saying, this guy, gosh, has to get this many carries. It's our offense is so they play us this way. This is how we attack it. And, with that being said, I can tell you when it's crunch time, AJ Alexander is going to touch the football. I think, like I said, he's going to finish probably around 4,000 yards for his career at Dothan. He's a scholarship football player, obviously getting school paid for. He's a great human being. I mean, it's awesome when you have kids that are so easy to root for, and he's one of those kids. And Sirlathian Meadows is one of those kids. Marcus Reeves is a great kid. Jordan Rollins, only a sophomore. I mean, we've got a lot of weapons, but like I've sometimes have to explain, especially to parents, is we have one football. And you can't, there's only so many pieces to that pie, and I think everybody knows that AJ Alexander's going to get the biggest piece. That's just the reality of it, and we're not going to apologize for that. But those other guys certainly are in a position that when they touch the ball are really dangerous with it.
I had AJ for 23 carries, and I think 109 yards. That's unofficially. That's by my count. He finished,
I think when they ran the stats on Saturday morning, I think he had 25 for 138. So.
Okay.
Another big game for him.
Yeah, and did catch a few, threw it to him a few times out of the backfield too, I think.
Yeah, and that's really been, AJ's always been able to run the football. He's worked really hard on, catching the ball out of the backfield. And, because the reality is when he goes to college, he's going to have to do that. He's going to have to get involved in the pass game. And he's worked really hard on that and, put himself in position to really be a dual threat back that can beat you with his legs and beat you with his hands when he catches the football.
Coach, you mentioned you're not out of the playoff picture yet, but it looks like you're going to have to win the remaining 3 region games, and then you'll need a little help from our friends somewhere along the way. But you're still in the picture, and I know you've been preaching that to these young men this past week.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we need a lot of help, but we need a little bit of help. I think if the people win that are supposed to win. If we win our next 3, we'll be in some sort of a tiebreaker situation and, what that works out. But, the reality is if we don't win the next one, it doesn't matter. And, I basically told our kids, I don't – kids are too smart these days. You can't lie to them. And, it's with social media, they know how things are. The reality is we'll be heavily favored the next 2 football games. And, the reality is after that, we'll play a really good Auburn team. And we need to improve and we need to get better these next 2 weeks to put ourselves in position to play good against Auburn. And that's why this week is so important. You can't go out and just go through the motions and say, we're going to do this and do this and do this. It's just not how it works. If you look at teams that they're looked at playoff, they're typically playing their best football at the end of the year. And I hope that when we go play Auburn here in 3 weeks, we can say that is the best football we have played all year. And I tell our kids all the time, if we get beat playing our best football, you tip your hat to the opponent, you move on. But I'm a believer that if we play really good football, we're a tough team to beat for anybody.
Coach, as we kind of get close to wrapping up this week's edition of the show, any final thoughts, or takeaways going into tomorrow night's game against JAG?
Yeah, I think, number one, I think that, we've been on the road for so long that, we've got 4 games in a row here or at home in a row here, and just get out and support these young guys. We've got great kids that work extremely hard. They take great pride in representing Dothan High School and the city of Dothan. We are the only public school in the high school or in the city, and just get out and support them. We play a good brand of football and play extremely hard and physical, and it's going to be a beautiful night, cooling off a little bit. And I think what a great night to bring your family out and watch some high school football.
I've already looked ahead, Coach. We could potentially be in the 60s by kick, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, this is my 7th year down in Alabama, and I don't know why, but this has seemed like the hottest one, and the weather ain't breaking. And every now and then we'll get a day where it teases you, and it goes right back the next day.
Right.
So I know the players are certainly looking forward for a little bit of a break in the weather.
I mean, I don't know what you guys are complaining about. It's been pleasant for me every Friday night during the season.
I don't mind the Friday nights, but those Tuesday and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. get a little steamy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyways, Coach, as always, appreciate your time doing this every single week, and good luck on tomorrow night against JAG. And let everybody know you can check out the broadcast starting at 6:45 on 96.9 The Legend. If you're not tuned on the radio, check out the app. It's right there, and kickoff will be at 7. And again, Coach, thanks for coming on. And everybody, you have been listening to the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show right here on 96.9 The Legend.
You've been listening to Dothan High School Wolves football, exclusively on your home for great country legends, 96.9 The Legend.